Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Huck. Today I'm doing a spoiler-free review for The Harp of Kings by Juliet Marillier. I requested this arc from the publisher and they very kindly sent it to me for an honest review, so thank you very much to Ace for sending this to me. This is the first book in a new series by Juliet Marillier, which is called The Warrior Bards, which is coming out September 3rd. This is set in the same world as the Seven Waters series and the Blackthorn and Grimm trilogy. We're following three perspectives: Livan, Brock, and Dow, which I may not be saying their names correctly because they're all Irish names and I'm not totally sure how to pronounce them, but there is a little pronunciation key in the front of the book which is very helpful, so hopefully I'm not too far off. These three young warriors are all training and competing to become part of the elite warriors of Swan Island. Brock and Livan are brother and sister, and they are also musicians. So Brock sings and plays the harp, and Livan sings and plays the whistle. And because of these musical talents, they are given a special mission. So it's very uncommon for the warriors of Swan Island to give a mission to trainees, but because the cover for this mission is being traveling minstrels, they give this mission to Brock and Livan because they are such talented musicians. The mission is to find and recover the Harp of Kings, which is a very old and very special and significant harp that is played at the coronation of kings. So they have to travel to another kingdom and find this harp before the upcoming coronation. Before diving into the review, I do want to put a couple of content warnings on this. The first one being that there is a story about the torture and death of a pet, which is not excessively graphic, but I did find it kind of distressing to read those parts. There is also abuse, child abuse, sexual assault, and mention of bullying and childhood trauma. But all of that being said, I did really love this book. I loved being back in this world. If you watch my videos, you'll know that Juliet Marillier is one of my favorite authors, and I love her Seven Waters series and the Blackthorn and Grimm trilogy. So it was really fun to be back in this world, back with Juliet Marillier's wonderful writing, and finding all of the little ways that this series is going to be, connected to those previous series. This one, I do think that you should read the Seven Waters series and the Blackthorn and Grimm trilogy before diving into the Harp of Kings. You could probably understand the story without having read those, but having the context of those previous stories will really enrich your understanding of this world and these characters and this story. And also, if you just started with this, you would probably get some spoilers for some of the previous series also. So I think it would be best to read Seven Waters and Blackthorn and Grimm before diving into the Harp of Kings. So as I said, we are following three main perspectives. The first is Livan. She is hot-headed and impulsive, but she also has a really strong sense of justice that drives her and sometimes gets her into trouble. But I really enjoyed her perspective and her as a character. Then we have Brock, who is her brother, and he can definitely hold his own as a warrior, but really his heart is in his music, and he's a bit more of a gentle soul. And last we have Dow, who has a bit of a painful past that drives him and has really shaped him into the person that he is. Sometimes I felt like Dow's perspective was a little over dramatic, but we do get to find out more about his character and really the experiences that have formed him, and so that kind of makes more sense after we learn more about him. But I do also think that if you've read the Seven Waters series and you liked the character Bran from Son of the Shadows, then you'll probably also like Dow because they're both warriors who have had a painful past that has really shaped them and pushed them and driven them to become these warriors that they are as adults. As we're following these three characters, we start out on Swan Island, but very soon leave to go to this castle where they will be following their mission and searching for the Harp of Kings. And we settle into the daily lives of the people of this castle. And we also get to know more about the politics that are underlying everything at this castle and some of the questionable decisions that have been made that were decisions based more on promises and traditions and not so much on wisdom. Of course, we also have a touch of the uncanny in this story. We have fair folk, and we also get to learn a little bit more about the fair folk in this region and how they have coexisted with the humans, and a little bit about what their history with humankind is. There were some creatures in this book that I felt like were not fully explained or fully explored, but I do feel like since this is the first book in the series, those creatures may come up again later on and may be part of an overarching plot throughout the series. So I'm definitely intrigued by these creatures, and I'm holding out hope that they will be integrated more into the series as it progresses. Also, the characters in this make a lot of very intuitive decisions, which kind of did two things for me. One is it did sometimes make it feel like their decisions weren't the most logical, and then also didn't have as much consequences as I would have liked. I would have liked for them to have a little bit more like real mistakes and real consequences, but a lot of their intuitive decisions just kind of worked out and happened to be the right thing to do because they were following their intuition. And I do like it when characters follow their intuition, but sometimes I just wish that there were a little bit more like real consequences for them. But having these very intuitive characters making these kinds of decisions did give it more of a fairy tale folklore kind of feel, because a lot of stories, especially old stories that deal with the fair folk, have these kinds of characters that make these very intuitive decisions that turn out to be correct because of how the fair folk and their magic works. So there were things that I liked and didn't like about it. I wish that there were a few more like actual mistakes and consequences, but I did really like that real fairy tale feel that you get from those kinds of like deeply intuitive characters. As for the writing, of course, this has Juliet Marillier's beautiful writing, which I always love. This is written in first person present, which is not a personal favorite tense of mine, but that's very much like a personal preference. I just like am not a fan of first person present, but a lot of people may like that. One of the things that you get from that is that it very much feels like these characters are talking to you and like telling you their story and telling you their thoughts, which is a really cool experience and I think a lot of people would like. You also get a lot of their inner dialogue and their inner thoughts because of the perspective that it's written in. So it's interesting that you get to see their thoughts and their reflections and perspective. Compared to some of her previous books, I felt like this one was also written less densely, or the writing style was less dense than some of her earlier work. Although, as with all of Juliet Marillier's books, this one is a slow build. There was one section in it that was especially slow, that it was in the first half, that I felt a little bit like it was just kind of treading water. It was at a point where they were at the castle and they were now gathering information. So for a little while it felt like not a lot was going on and it was just sort of treading water. But after I got past that point, I could see why that part of the book was necessary, because we did really get to settle into the daily lives of the people of this castle and get a feel for who these people are. We got to learn more about the nuances of this castle and the politics that are going on there, and we really did gather a lot of information. And that made it so that later on, when those people got involved or that information became necessary, it didn't feel like it came out of nowhere. The payoff didn't feel unearned. So I could definitely see why that slower section was necessary to the flow of the story. Also, once I got past that slower section, the story like totally swept me away. I couldn't put it down. overall, I really loved reading this. It was great to be back in this world with these new characters who I really enjoyed. Of course, I love Juliet Marillier's writing, and it just was such a fun time. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I'm really excited for the next book in the series to see where the rest of this series goes, where it takes these characters and this story. So that is all for my review of The Harp of Kings by Juliet Marillier. This is coming out September 3rd, 2019, so it'll be out very soon. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, bye!